I'm John Nagle. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Gyoza Games LLC. Gyoza Games is a sort of a VR-centric gaming company. Our goal is to create titles that are what we call delicious. They're very fun, very approachable, very arcadey in general. We think probably the best experiences in VR have been the ones that have been very action-packed and fast-paced, and we really like that approach. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on. And of course, we're going to also branch out from VR, take the intellectual property that we create and take it into other markets, non-VR as well. So we're going to try to hit as many target platforms as we can with the games that we create, and make it accessible to as many people as possible. So I've had a lot of experience in video games over the last 25 years, working in everything from the early days of DOS games, and then up through the early console era, through the Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Xbox, all the way up to through mobile, and here we are in virtual reality. To be honest, I'd kind of gotten a little bit bored with the state of gaming. It seemed like we'd hit a brick wall in terms of the creative and the technical, and just nobody was really pushing boundaries anymore. And basically, I was out of games for a while. And so when I got to try VR, it was kind of breath of fresh air, and just so many new possibilities and opportunities opened up in my head that I really wanted to start exploring some of those ideas and start pushing some boundaries again. Well, I think a lot of the game ideas that we're seeing come to fruition now are probably game ideas that have been in designers floating around in their heads for a long time. But quite honestly, the hardware wasn't there, or the technology wasn't there to allow those experiences to be made. And now we are virtual gods now, because we have an environment that we can populate with literally anything you can imagine, and make any sort of rules that bend any known rules that we've all known all of our lives. We can change anything about that game and that environment and make it completely unique. And so I think from a design standpoint, there's nothing more empowering than that. Just being able to create something out of whole cloth and make something that's compelling is really compelling. Really, it's a magnificent feeling for me. So our first game is called Inbound. It takes place on an asteroid mining colony. Basically, you are a defender of the colony. The colony is under attack from rival mining operation, and so you basically have lots of incoming missiles and projectiles and other things that are attacking the colony, trying to destroy it, and you have control of various turrets on the ground, and you're sort of in a large scale where you're walking over the environment. The environment is sort of in front of you, somewhat small, and you have control of turrets on the ground and different other armaments that you control with your hand controllers to target the incoming projectiles, and it's very action-packed and very fast-paced, and the environments are very beautiful. I think it really capitalizes on the benefits of VR, especially in an arcade-type setting, and so I really think the people are going to love it, because again, it does capture that arcade feeling that we had back in the 80s. Or for your readers who are that old, but the arcade feeling of action, quick turn, very approachable, very fun, no real learning curve to speak of, just get in and play and have a good time. One thing that we are very much focused on here at Gyoza is making actual games. For us, nothing is more important than creating. Although the VR tech is cool, we don't want to rely on that as the hook for the player. There has to be a gaming element, and since my background is very much classic traditional gaming, there's a lot of really core game mechanics that actually do translate rather well into VR, and I think it's a really good opportunity to re-explore some of those ideas in a new medium. I don't see it as missing the point of VR to re-explore the old gameplay mechanics. I think it is if we had a time machine and we could take the Vive system or the Oculus system, put it in the time machine, and send it back to the designers of the 80s and 90s. I think they would be designing very much the same games that I'm designing, but taking advantage of that additional computing hardware and rendering hardware to create a vastly better and more evolved experience than what they were able to create with the limited hardware of the time. I see it exactly like that. Like the creators of Doom are creating now what they would have created had they had the hardware back in the day. And I think that, again, very, very much so, that's exactly the state of where we are right now. Is we are now finally given the tools as developers and designers to create the kind of experiences and gameplay experiences that we would have created long ago. I mean, think about it. In the early '80s, everyone was playing Zork on their Commodore 64, and they were reading text on the screen that said, "You're standing in front of a small house," and you had to imagine all of this stuff. But now we have the technology to make not only the rendering of the house, but you're literally standing in front of the house itself. So that's what the idea they were trying to convey, and now we have the technology to actually give you that. So that abstraction that we had to deal with in the past is gone. A lot of the first-person shooters have, they're obviously extraordinarily well designed in many cases and very well implemented, and the technology behind them is mind-blowing. No question about that. But on the other side, I think in a lot of ways they've run their course. I mean, we've seen and done everything in a first-person shooter scenario that I think you can possibly imagine. So a lot of the ideas back in the original birth of the arcade environment, a lot of those ideas were very abstract because we couldn't render very realistic things back in those days. So we had to do things that were far, far more abstract than they are now. And so that actually was, in a way, very liberating because we weren't constrained with reality. We could create, Omega Race and asteroids and Tempest. Tempest is about as abstract as it gets. So, those kind of play mechanics now have the opportunity to live again. So a year from now, I think Gyoza will have established itself as a preeminent content creator, not only for virtual reality but for other platforms as well. I like to think of virtual reality right now as a garden. We're planting the seeds right now, and we have to water those seeds, and things will start to grow out of it. Right now, I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible in this medium, and I think the next year is going to give us a lot of opportunity to be very creative and create some really amazing content. And I think we have a really good opportunity to show the gaming public that they live in a magical time, and we're going to make sure that we expose the magic of VR.